Hi, welcome to Tales from the Tinkerage. Recently I've been working on some love spoons. These are a traditional gift from a man to a woman during courting, often at marriage. And it's something that my father used to make by hand when I was a boy. And I've thought, well, something I've always wanted to do and never got around to doing it, so I've made a point of getting around to it. And I've made a few, just trying them out, look at some techniques, and haven't recorded them. And I thought it's time that I'd maybe try to do some recording. Now, recently a friend of mine who's an artist gave me this piece of yew. Now, it's only a 1/4 inch thick, so I'm not going to be able to make a deep bowl. These are significantly deeper, they're 3/4 of an inch thick. This one, it's just not much difference. So I'm hoping I can make something. And I thought I'd just go through some of the processes that I've been looking at in making a love spoon. Now, I'm not very artistic, so I've taken advantage of Google image search and I've found an image of a love spoon that I like. This one has a heart intertwined with a Celtic knot, and I'm going to transfer this to the yew. Now, there are various techniques to do this. One technique is to draw straight onto the wood using pencil or some sort of pen. Another technique is to take an image drawn on paper and use carbon paper. If you're not familiar with carbon paper, then ask your grandfather, your grandmother. It needs to be somebody that's reasonably old. It's not likely to be, or if you're old enough, ask your mother or your father. But if you're young, you may not have heard of it and you may not be familiar with it. The other option, which I'm going to use today, which I've used with is to take my image. I've cut it slightly around where I want to actually cut. I have, in the process of doing this, sort of changed the shapes slightly. I've actually stretched this. I imported the image into Word and I've stretched it, then just cut it out. Now I'm just going to use some Pritt stick. It's just a generic paper glue. Comes in as its name suggests, a stick. Things are used in schools a lot. I find them quite useful. It's not the stickiest of glue, unless you don't want something to stick to it. And then I'm going to pick a point. Now, there's quite a few cracks on this piece of yew, and I've spent quite a bit of time trying to find the best place to use. Okay, I've stuck that along the grain pattern that I want to use. Now, I've got various options here. I could go around with a knife and score where I want to go. I haven't done that previously, so I'm just going to go in straight with a cut. I'm going to use a bandsaw to rough cut around here. I've got some cracks there, so I'll probably come down here. Looks reasonably good then. I might be able to use that for something else, so I'll then come around. There's some cracks coming in from the side. So what I'll probably do is just cut out a square here. Okay, so I've used the bandsaw to rough out the shape. It's a little bit proud around the outside. That's okay, because I'll be sanding this down. I'm now going to use a drill and scroll saw to take out the small segments in the middle. Don't know if you can see, this is actually called a fret saw rather than a scroll saw. It's a 16-inch draper, inherited off a relative. Needs a bit of a refurb. Top could do with a bit of a polish, but it will do the job. Okay, so with the scroll saw I've taken out the bigger holes, but I've got a couple of holes left. They're going to need cutting out, but the scroll saw blade is too wide, so I'm going to dig out my jeweler saw, and just for fun I've actually put my jeweler's peg on my scroll saw bed. Before anyone asks, why don't I put the blade that I'm using in the jeweler saw in the scroll saw? Wrong type. This electric fret saw uses pin blades. Okay, so this is roughed out now. Before I start sort of carving the relief, I'm going to do some work on the bowl. One of the things I think I need to think about in future is actually sort of doing some of the work on the bowl before I cut out, because that might make it easier to kind of hold. I know that's something I've seen done. There's a couple of approaches that I've taken so far to looking at the bowl. The first is to use a hook knife. So I've got a Mora hook knife. This is the one that I inherited from my father. I've done a little bit of work on sharpening it because it really wasn't very sharp, and it certainly made it better, but it certainly needs a little bit more work compared to ones that I've seen people using on other channels. The other approach is to use Dremel, and I'll probably look into that in a few minutes. I'm going to give it a try now with this hook knife to see how that's going now that I've spent a bit of time sharpening it. Still got a lot more work to do on this in terms of sharpening. I'm going to stop there with this. I don't like using any knife or blade that doesn't cut into the wood easily. At the moment I'm having to push this a little bit too hard, and I've learned from experience that doing that is usually going to lead to some form of accident. So I'm going to move on to kind of more modern technique. Now I have a rotary tool. Takes these fairly standard parts, including these 80 grit flap wheels. So the bowl's pretty much roughed out. Now I'm going to use a drum sanding bit, and I'm going to take off the edge. I'm going to work on the back of the bowl, and I'm going to start to put a bit of shape into these pieces. So I'm going to use the belt sander, placed upside down. I haven't got a bench mounted sander. I'm going to use that to smooth out around the bowl and to bevel the bowl on the sides here. A few minutes with the belt sander. That's now looking a lot better. I've got a bit of shape to the back, and I need to start working on the relief detail here. I'm just going to use my knife here. I've got more a carving knife. I don't particularly know which particular model. I've had it for quite a few years. I've used it for kind of sort of bushcraft style carving. Keep a little set of ceramic stones on it, just to keep it a nice sharp edge. And I'm going to use this to sort of define some of the relief edging before I take off the paper. My father used to use scalpels. He was a qualified chiropodist. I guess you'd call them podiatrists nowadays. He had a familiarity with scalpels, and although he bought some carving knives, well, not carving knives, some little carving tools, which I still have, he hardly ever used them. He tended to use different shaped scalpel blades for different cuts. So I've cut in where I want each piece of wood to appear to go underneath the others. If they're intertwined, I've cut in. I'm now going to go back onto that and just chip away a little bit before it in order to make it stand a little bit more. Okay, I put paper on the front, and as you can see now, I've cut into the relief from the image. I didn't put paper on the back, so what I need to do now is just mark up where one piece of timber is going to go over another. Just need to repeat the process of cutting the relief on the back. Okay, so relief work is coming along nicely on the front, also on the back. Just going to give this a little sand now to get rid of that last bit of paper, and then it's going to be a long time with some fine sanding and some files, I think. So time to get to work with some needle files. They're great for getting into the little gaps and just cleaning up the shapes a little bit. I tend to use mostly triangular, just to get right into the apex. And half round. Okay, I've done a little bit more shaping work on the spoon. I've put a little bit of a taper on the front there, on the back. Now I have already sanded this through a range of grits. I used 80 grit to get rid of some of the ripples that the Dremel had left, and worked up through 180, 240, 320, 400, and even then a fine finish with a 600. Now there's a couple of little scratches that just keep catching my finger on the back about here, and I just want to work those out. So I'm going to take a little bit of 80 grit first of all and take that out. This piece of yew is just absolutely beautiful. I wish I could explain to you just how smooth this wood is now. Time for a finish. I have here some boiled linseed oil, and I just love the feel of this. I think this oil is just going to bring that out even more. Let's just see how that, look at that. I hope the camera's in focus. That is just beautiful. It's going to take some work getting into the nooks and crannies. Tempted? Yes, it does. I'll give that about 20 minutes to dry a little bit, and then I'm going to buff that off. The spoon has had one coat of boiled linseed oil, and that's dried out now. I'm going to give it a second coat, probably only 2 coats I think will be enough. I'm not sure if I'm going to give it any wax. I'll see at the end. I'm going to test it on a sample piece. I quite like it as it is. It is super smooth. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I put a post up saying if you want to know how smooth this is, then just stroke your screen. I went to 600 grit on this. There's a couple of little places where there's little knots and defects in the wood which aren't quite as smooth, but certainly this back piece here, I'm just so pleased with how smooth that is. So I'm going to give that a second coat of linseed oil, and then that will be it. And I'm going to give that actually to the lady who gave me the piece of yew. I hope that she likes it. Hi, a bit of an update. Last night I put on the last coat of boiled linseed oil, and when I woke up this morning, went to admire my work, as you do, discovered that there's a crack, a hairline crack down the back of the spoon. Now it's not going all the way through. It's got little knots here on the surface, and it's gone between those, and it's going almost down to the edge of the bowl. And it's not thrown through on the other side, so it hasn't gone through all the way. Now, I'm not sure how to deal with that. I've dealt with cracks on larger pieces of wood. Yeah, stick some wood glue in, clamp it. I've heard about people sucking that in with a vacuum cleaner on the other side if the crack goes all the way through. Using an air compressor to blow it in. I wasn't quite sure what to do with something so fine. So I want to make a shout out to all the great people of Facebook, maker groups, makers on YouTube, I like to make stuff group, small workshop, YouTube makers, wacky makers, there's a number of them. People like Chris Cute, big shout out to Chris Cute, he gave me some great advice. A couple of different suggestions. One was to use epoxy, put that in, okay, then sand that down. The other is to use CA glue, super glue, and that's what I'm going to go for. I've got some super glue here. And what I'm going to do, I haven't got an air compressor. Crack's not going all the way through, so I can't put a vac on the other side. Great suggestion from somebody else. I can't remember the name. I'll put a link to some of these underneath. I haven't got a straw handy in the tinkerage, but I've got this cork borer. Used to make holes for things. It's basically just a metal straw. You use that to blow the CA glue into the crack as much as possible. Won't take very long to dry. Then just going to sand it down again through the grits. Shouldn't need to go too much. And then hopefully put a little bit more linseed oil on, and hopefully no one will notice the difference. Crack is extending down from here, down between the two knots. It's very faint, almost right to the edge. So very, very hard to see. I'm hoping that a little bit of capillary action will help take that into the crack. So you can see with the shininess of that where that has hit. I'll need to leave that now for a few minutes to dry, and then we'll get to work on sanding that down and refinishing the back of the spoon. Some time's gone by. I've put on another coat of boiled linseed oil. I sanded down with some 600 grit. It is just about possible to see where the defect was repaired. There's a little bit of staining from the super glue. I might finish that again. I won't record that, but I might sand it down again once this linseed oil has dried in. Just see if I can get rid of this small little blemish, which is hard to spot. I think somebody that wasn't looking for it, didn't know it, would probably not find it, but I'm going to try and sort that out. I can just about detect it with my fingers. I've got quite sensitive fingers. It's something I want to work on, but I think I'm going to declare that finished. I hope you've liked this video. I shall probably do some more spoons. I might do a couple more spoon videos as well. I want to try different styles, different woods, different finishes, and some different techniques. It's a craft that I've really enjoyed doing. If you like it, please click like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I've got loads of tip videos, and hopefully there'll be some other project videos going up as well, and maybe some slideshow videos of some of my older projects. Share it with your friends as well, and feel free to comment. Try to respond to all comments. Thank you very much.